And we're live.
Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people doing incredible things. Hi, I'm doing my makeup. I'm Trey. I'm joined by my co host, Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi, I'm watching.
Do you like this color of blush? Do you like
No,
this? You're right, this is terrible. I'm going to
it's
wipe it off.
it's invisible. It's like
Can barely see it. You can barely
yeah,
see it.
it's like a whisper. It's like the LaCroix
Yeah.
of blush.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did specifically buy this one lipstick that existed in a field of lipsticks, but never came in contact with either of them, just like LaCroix does.
Oh, I see. Or
So
rather I don't.
that, well, bad puns aside, I'm really excited by today's guest. He has done so many projects that I can't wait to speak about and let him give his perspective on. So, Emily, would you introduce our fantastic guest today?
Yes, we have Emmy-nominated Joe Dulude II with us today, who has you have such a cool career because you do a lot with fine art and makeup artistry and design, and you talked about script writing. You have so much, and I can't wait to dive into all of it. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. It's great to be here.
Hooray. And so we were talking before the show started about how you have these cool pieces of art behind you on the wall. Our listening audience can't see them, but you've done these yourself, which is
Some of them I have.
some of
Yeah.
them, sorry.
Yeah.
But I think that's really neat. Some
Yeah.
artists can't even bring themselves to hang their own art on the wall, and I love that you can. So,
Yeah. It was something that it took me a while. When I stopped doing art for other people and started doing the art for myself was when it kind of changed. And then it wasn't about, I need everybody to tell me how good this is. I just have to have the reaction and love what I've done. And that's what's the most important.
that is brilliant. And that is how it should be. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Can I ask
Yep.
what made that mental shift happen for you?
Mm,
It was, and I'm gonna forget the name of the book now, and I should remember the name of this book.
that's okay.
It was a book that I read, and eventually
Yeah.
I'll remember it. Maybe it'll come in later in the conversation. I know it's sitting upstairs on my bookshelf, but and it just talked about art, and I think what it was is from the time that I was a kid, the only thing I wanted to be was an artist. But everybody told me I couldn't be an artist because you can't make money that way. You're never going to make a living. You're going to struggle, blah, 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 blah. So I ended up going to school for graphic design because that was the sort of the closest I could get to being an artist and didn't really enjoy it, and then fell into makeup. And because of my art background, the makeup came pretty easily to me. And yeah, and then but I was still so, like, for years and years and years, so self-conscious. Like, I just wasn't confident with myself. And I mean, I'm going to be 53 this year, and it took until probably turning 50 to be like, oh, hey, like, I feel confident in myself. Like, I'm happy with who I am and where I am. It's okay.
Um, so came to reading a book, and
Mhm.
the inspiration from that book led you to discover that self. And I think that's important for our listening audience to hear that because we have some people listening are so that are some people, myself included, sometimes scared to share what we create. And for you to say that you found it at this time and can still find that confidence, I think will really inspire some of our listeners. So I'm
Yeah,
really happy that you shared that. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. And even when I like started performing again, uh, when I probably when I first moved to Western Mass, so probably about 8 years ago or so, I started performing there. I hadn't performed since college.
Mm,
I was because I was so self-conscious, and I was worried what people thought about me, which is really weird because if you're acting, you're not playing yourself. But for some reason, I felt pressure, like I had to, like I just wasn't good enough. And then I started doing it out there, And then I started writing these shows, and I didn't know if I was funny. And I was like, well, I hope I am, and I hope these people like it. And then started doing it, and then it just became like, it's strange because it's a drag show where I'm pretty much the only person in drag, and then there's another character who's in male drag, who's non-binary, born female but non-binary, and does male drag. But everybody else is just playing the gender that they are usually, and so now it's become like a family tradition at the holidays in Western Mass for people in the area to come with their families and watch this show, which was such a huge, I'm not even sure I could say how it makes me feel, because there's just this like warm sense when I hear that, because of having gone through a lot of the stuff that I've gone through, being a gay man and trying, to maneuver in spaces and things like that, and continue to go through sometimes. Just to have that is a really gratifying feeling, and also, like, again, to give me the confidence to be like, oh, I can be myself.
Yeah.
I feel that on so many levels. Like I'm, like myself as a queer identifying man, like I still have some of that, where existing in certain spaces is still kind of anxiety ridden for me. So finding that level of confidence even now, I, yeah, walking into an audition space, anxiety. Walking into my job, anxiety. So I look forward to the day that some of that starts to dissipate just a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
like I said, it took me until, like, my late 40s or 50s before a lot of this really happened. And it took a lot of work and a lot of tough situations and decisions to do. But yeah, but if you do it, it will happen.
It's interesting because I'm straight, and I so I don't experience this, and coming from my perspective, it's something that I don't think about as much walking into a job, expressing my art form, and things like that you've described. And so I guess I kind of want to know a little more. I want to know, like, so when you go to express your art form, are you worried that what is the anxiety? Is it that people are going to judge it based on your sexuality and not the art as it exists? Or, like, tell me more about that.
Hey, I don't know. I think it's like manyfold. I think there is always that thing, like, people aren't going to like what I do, um, or people are going to look at it and be like, "Ugh, it's not for me." But you also have to understand, like, art is subjective.
Yeah.
Like, some masters of art, if they're doing still life, I can't stand a still life. Like, it just does nothing for me. Like, I get no kind of emotion from it at all. It could be beautiful, and the brush strokes are beautiful, and it looks great, and the lighting is wonderful, but for me it doesn't evoke any kind of emotion, because
Sure.
it's a bowl of fruit on a table. So I get that art is subjective, but what's been happening lately for me is I've been now putting a lot of myself into my art. So the series I'm working on now is exploring being a middle-aged single gay man, and what's that like. I have a piece called Catfish, which are all the people that tried to catfish me on Grindr, and I took screenshots of their profile pictures and the messages, and then printed them all out, and then, like, X'd out the people's eyes, or like blotted out their eyes, so you can't really see who it is because they're all just stolen pictures anyway.
Yeah.
But and all of the messages, and then painted over it with the grinder yellow color and the blue. And so, and I had, like, most people haven't seen it yet, so I'm really curious as to what people will think about that. But at the same time, I'm like, this is who I am now, and I've got to be able to express this part of me, because I've kept it in for so long. I was never comfortable with being gay. I would sit a certain way. I would never cross my legs. I would speak in a certain voice. Every time I, like, met another man, when I would shake their hand, it was like a really forceful shake because I had to like, prove that I'm a man. And
Yeah.
as I got older, and I worked at a camp for kids of LGBTQ parents, and that's kind of where the journey started, because the kids didn't want you to be anybody else than who you were. And if you were pretending to be someone else, they would call you out on it. And that started opening me up, like being around these kids started opening me up to be myself, and seeing them be their selves, and be proud of who they were and the families that they came from, and also the struggles, like talking with them and with the struggles that they were dealing with, coming from an LGBTQ family. And so that's really what started like the process of me sort of opening myself up and being like, look, this is who I am. Like, I don't have to worry about how I dress or how I talk or my mannerisms or how I hold myself. I can just be.
And what an authentic way to be. Like that's so like with your art, it's giving a sense of authenticity that some people may not know about. And so by speaking that truth, you're giving space for that to exist and be a piece of knowledge in someone else's life, like, oh, this is a thing that can happen,
Yeah.
or this is a thing that goes on that I had no idea about.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, there's so when I was living in Western Mass, I worked with a photographer who took all of these photos of me in drag, and they were all shirtless. So it was just basically like head and shoulders. I had different colored wigs, different styles, did different makeup styles. She took all these pictures, white backgrounds, beautiful. She did some really beautiful work. And there's this old bank that wasn't being used that had these two big places in the front where you could put pictures up. So we got permission to put two of the photos up, and they were behind lucite, screwed in. I know because I screwed them in, into wood. And I was in London, checking on Wicked in London, and I saw a post. I think someone posted on Facebook or something and might have tagged me in it, like saying, "Oh, I was so sad to see those beautiful pictures, torn down." So in the middle of the night, someone came and ripped the lucite out of the wood and broke it, and then ripped up the photos. And the photos were probably like, I would say they had to be like 60 by 72 or something. They were
Huge.
really big,
Yeah.
really
Wow.
big. And so when I got back, we had I'm on the board of this of Egg Tooth Productions, which we do a lot of immersive stuff. They produce all of my drag stuff. We do all kinds of like art festivals and stuff. So we got the group of us together, and we decided what the response was going to be. So our initial response, the first thing we did was, a week from the time that it happened, we got all of the photos from this photographer, and from sundown to sun up, we projected all of the photos onto the bank building. And we had people that were stationed there all night that volunteered to stay there to guard the projector. And then the second part of what we did was, I came up with this idea to get local photographers, four of our local photographers, to come together and for 4 hours one Saturday afternoon to take photos of anybody that wanted their photo taken in the community. And then that night we would project them up onto the bank. And so it would be everybody in the community, being up there and being seen. And it was anybody. I, didn't care who it was. I didn't care if, you were conservative or you were liberal or what your beliefs were. It's like, we are all part of this community, and we need to see that we're all part of it. And that was the second part of what we did as a response, because I was like, I don't want to respond with anger. I want to respond with love, which is difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
When emotions are high. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. When your face has been torn up and left on the sidewalk.
I am sorry that your artwork, or the artwork you were part of, was vandalized in that fashion, but I think your response was far more powerful and probably needed to happen. I think maybe that spoke more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you had the opportunity to be able to do that. Sad that the vandalism happened, but kind of maybe good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was, but it was really interesting after to see most of the responses where people would say, you know, I drove past those pictures every day and I would just get a smile on my face every time I drove by, or I just moved, I'm, you know, trans and I just moved to this community, and to see those pictures up in the middle of downtown made me realize I moved to the right place and that I will be supported in this place. And
Oh.
that's the, like, to hear that, that's like, okay, that's kind of what I want to do. Like, I want to, you know, have a safe space for people. I want people to feel, you know, seen. Even with my makeup work, one of the things that I've been doing as a makeup designer is to bring people who historically have not had access to the space of theater to come in. So as my associates, I've been bringing in, especially people of color, because, you know, most of the designers with makeup and hair designers, not all, but most, are white.
Okay.
And so it was important for me as like a legacy and as to continue for theater to grow, to bring in people of color as my associates and setting them up for success so that then they can go on to then design their own shows, you know, and otherwise they wouldn't have had the access to the space, you know, and it would have been very difficult for them to get in.
Wow. That is amazing. And I applaud that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
And it's worked. It's worked because two of my associates have now gone on to design their own shows. One designed The Outsiders, and the other designed Dancin' and Here Lies Love, and is doing the new musical that I always forget the name of. That's coming, I think, like October-ish.
Okay.
But I don't. It's an all Asian cast. There's, I think, 8 actors, and they're all playing like multiple characters in the show, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me.
How cool is that? Look what happens when you lift other people up.
Yep.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Yep.
And it's really cool to see that you had a firsthand effect to their career trajectory. I can't even say that word. Trajectory. And
yeah, they both call me their fairy godmother.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
You brought up Wicked a moment ago, and I want to make sure that we're calling out some of the shows that you have also been a makeup designer for, which includes Wicked. I saw that you were involved with Death Becomes Her, that you have been, which I can't wait to go see. Oh my gosh, I had a list and I'm completely forgetting. Will you help me out? What are some of the shows that you've been a makeup designer for?
Oh, a lot. It's like it averages out to about 1.8 shows, I think, per year since I've been doing this, and I've been doing it for 22 years, 21 years.
Okay.
But it was Wicked, Wedding Singer, Anastasia, Beautiful, MJ, Beetlejuice, SpongeBob, Death Becomes Her, Suffs, K-pop. I'm forgetting my own resume now.
Well, it's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. Yeah. So it's been a lot, and I've been very, very lucky. You know, I fell into it. I did theater as a kid, but never thought of doing it as a career, especially not makeup design as a career, because who knew that was a career to have? I mean, when I was starting out with makeup, who knew a makeup artist was a job to have unless you worked in film and TV, you know? So I just sort of fell into my makeup career. I kind of just fell into this theater. I was living in LA at the time, came back to New York, and I was working on this independent film trailer that my friend was doing so that he could raise the money to actually film the film. And I was in New York, and my friend called me, Kate Best, and she's Vanessa Williams' makeup artist and Jennifer Lopez's makeup artist. And she was doing Vanessa's makeup for Into the Woods on Broadway.
Okay.
And she said, will you come and do 2 shows for me? You know, I know you, I know she'll be comfortable with you. And I said, sure. And the 2 shows turned into 8 shows. And then I went back to LA, and she said, can you come back and do another week? And I said, sure. So she flew me back, did another week of shows, went back to LA. And then she called and said, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, will you come and take over for me? Because she's a celebrity makeup artist. She's not, you know, someone who's working 8 shows a week in theater. And so I said yes and came back, and then worked on that till it closed. And Susan Hilferty was the costume designer for it. And I had heard that she was doing Wicked, and I loved the book. And so I just said to her, like, I would love to work on the show, meaning the same thing I was doing, like work on the show, like just do the makeup for the show. And then I got a call a month before they were leaving for San Francisco to come in and interview to design the show, because Joe Mantello wanted a makeup designer who wasn't theatrical, who didn't have a theatrical background. He wanted someone who had an editorial background because he wanted it to look different. And that's why I got it. And yeah, so a month before we left, and then I had to figure out what to do because I had never done a show this big before. So I was like clueless on so many things, but like most of my career, I just pretended like I knew what I was doing, and then went from there.
Absolutely. Yep.
That is
Such a cool story. I love that. And you've been nominated for an Emmy.
I have for Jesus Christ Superstar Live, which was probably has to be one of the top things that I've worked on. At that time, I was looking to get out of makeup, and I was done with it. And I was working for a study abroad company in Massachusetts that specialized in performing arts. So we placed people in performing arts programs all over the world. And I was sitting there, and I realized after about a month of it, I was like, this is not for me. Like, I am not a behind the desk person staring at a computer, making cold calls to people who, you know, showed interest in one thing or clicked on one thing on a website. And now suddenly we have all their information and I have to cold call them to ask them about it. And I knew it was bad when I would work from home one day a week. And so I had my computer with me, and I asked if, you know, just say her name, Cheryl. Is Cheryl there? And she was like, what? And I said, is Cheryl there? She goes, no. She's not. And I was like, up. So yeah, I realized there was time to end then. And then I found out that Paul Tazwell was doing the Donna Summer musical. So I messaged him and I said, hey, do you need someone to do makeup for the Donna Summer musical? You know, I'd love to do it. He's like, yeah, I would, but there's something else I would love for you to do. And then he's like, it's Jesus Christ Superstar Live on NBC. And I was like, yes, I'll do it. Do it. Yes. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Everybody involved in that show wanted to put on the best show that they possibly could.
Oh, cool.
There was no ego. There was no, like, usually when you're working shows, especially sometimes with like the higher ups, you know, sometimes you feel that tension or you feel that pressure. It never felt that way. We always felt appreciated. It went so well. It was such a great cast to work with and a crew to work with. I got to put together a crew of 15 people, you know, to work on this. I got to design all of the tattoos for it. And it was really amazing. And then to get nominated for an Emmy, I went to LA for the awards, and I had hired a PR person because that's how you win, by, you know, doing PR and getting people to know you, and then they vote for you because they see your name or whatever, and however it works. It's like a popularity contest that I was never good at when I was a kid. But yeah, so we went and walked on the red carpet, and as we were walking on the red carpet, the Property Brothers were walking behind us. So that was kind of weird.
Huh.
And then we got on the red carpet, and I had to stop, and my PR person was like, are you okay? Do you need something, water, because it was really hot that day. And I was like, no, I said, I just need a moment. I was like, this, I've seen this on my television for years. And now I'm here on the red carpet. Like, it
Oh,
was such a surreal moment. And then at one point I was doing an interview and I was standing between Judd Apatow and the Fab Five from Queer Eye. And it was
wow.
like like, I was like, where am I and who am I right now? It was really, really incredible. And, sadly lost to Saturday Night Live. But, you know, that that goes without saying. I mean, because they pretty much would win every year. But even Louis, who's the head of the makeup department at Saturday Night Live, had said to me, he was like, "You have this year." He's like, "We don't have it." He was like, "I voted for you." He was like, "You have this," and but yeah, we didn't,
That
sadly.
is so amazing, though. What
Yeah.
to be told that, like,
Hmm.
we thought you had this, like, that is such a
And by
compliment.
someone of Louis's stature and his accomplishments, like
Hmm.
that was really cool.
What is that moment like when you find out that you've been nominated for an Emmy? What is that moment like? I hear sometimes that people hear whispers of it in advance, like, "Oh, you could," or "It's possible," but the moment that you actually hear that it happened.
Well, I was actually in Klagenfurt, Austria, for the World Body Painting Festival. I was a guest judge and also was doing a class. So it was very difficult because I could only, at that time too, I didn't have the kind of data access like I do now on my phone. So I had to go into we had like a VIP area where they had food and drinks for us. And I had to go in there when I knew it was the time that they were going to uh, be putting them all out. And I had to go into the tent and get on their Wi-Fi and try to find it and keep like refreshing. And the Wi-Fi wasn't that great. Um, but finally saw it, and it was like a sense of happiness that I really rarely felt, and was so excited. And then I had made new friends there, some makeup artists and other people there, and so like my first thing was like I ran to them and told them, and it was like this huge like celebration, and we all went out after for drinks, and it was just like a great place to be to get the news.
Mm-hmm.
And also again like so surreal, like how is this happening, like as a kid I would never have imagined that anything like this could happen. Having like pictures, like ripping pictures out of magazines of, celebrities and having them up on my wall. And then in my later years, like working with them and talking with them and becoming friends. Like one of my favorite was Patty Duke.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I had watched Valley of the Dolls over and over. Like I could quote that. And she came into San Francisco Wicked as Madame Morrible, and she couldn't do her makeup, so I would go in and do her makeup every day, and we
Oh,
became very, very close. And it was just like I I would have never expected that in my life. And it's this strange thing that like I've just always allowed the universe to kind of take me on a ride, and wherever that ride leads, I just go with it, and for good or for bad. And uh and I think having that openness and that availability has really um, brought me into some incredible experiences.
and it sounds like they're also well deserved.
Well, I hope so.
I mean, you
I
worked hard
hope
for
so.
it, and you
I
are very
did.
talented, and it doesn't come without that.
Yeah.
I feel like, but I like that you're also just you're like a normal person. I don't know how else to put that, but like that's the one thing that when we're kids and when we are regular people, we see people in Hollywood and celebrities as being like something else. They're a different
Hmm.
breed of human, or completely unattainable, or there's some kind of magical being. And when we realize then that you now you're working among them, now you're
Hmm.
part of it, not only are they real people, Patty Duke,
Hmm.
but also you're one of them then. And when you
Yeah.
realize that all of this is just these are just people doing their jobs too.
Yeah.
I don't think, at least for us, I don't think it takes the magic away, but it's kind of cool to see that these are still real humans.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I learned early in my career too was not to listen to what other people said about people. Because when I first started Wicked, a friend of mine was like, oh, you're going to hate Carol Shelley. She's awful. She's such an awful person. She's so mean. So I went in really nervous the first time I met her because I was like, I had this idea of what she was going to be like in my head and that she was going to hate everything that I said. And she came in and she was the loveliest of people. And we again became good friends. And that taught me right there. I was like, okay, I can't listen to what other people say. Their experiences with these people are their experiences and not my experiences. Some of the people that I've heard bad things about, very true, and the experience has not been that great. But I also learn how to trust what is being said and how it's being said and who's saying it, especially if multiple people are saying it. Then I can go in understanding that, and I can figure out how to work in that situation and how to present myself and how to talk to the person, because I already have that knowledge.
Right. Well, and sometimes people are just having a bad day.
Yeah. I mean, when I worked with Vanessa Williams, it was great. Like, she was just a normal person, and then we would have days where I'd go into the dressing room to do her makeup, and we would be like chatting, talking about everything, like her best friends from Rhode Island, which is where I'm from, where I live now. And like, we would chat, and then other days she would just be in a very quiet mood, and I could read that. And that's the importance of like makeup and hair people, is you have to be able to read your talent, to know where they are, because it's not about you, it's about them. And so some days, like, we would just have the TV on and be watching game shows like Jeopardy, I think was what used to be on when I was doing the makeup, and she just was in a quiet mood, so we wouldn't talk at all. But so generous, like, I mean, to this day, when I see her, it's a huge hug, and like, we can just chat forever and catch up on things because we don't really see each other that much anymore. But I was dating this guy in New York, and it was our 1-year anniversary. And I decided to make a video for him, and it was this song by Architecture in Helsinki, I think. And so I sent it to all the people that I know, and with the lyrics, and said, "Hey, can you just film a little bit of this song for me?" And she was one of the ones that responded and did it.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah. And so when I got the email for that one, I was actually with him at the time, and then I had to like subdue my excitement about it, because I was like, he was like, "What?" I was like, "Oh, nothing."
It's nothing at all.
Fine. It's fine.
Just an everyday thing.
Yeah.
How wonderful, though. How much do you find yourself being some level of therapist in that position?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. We makeup and hair, especially because we work so closely with them, we are in their faces, and depending on what you kind of makeup or hair you're doing on the person, you could be there for a very long time.
Sure.
Working with them. So, and it's kind of their safe space, I guess, that they feel. So they, if you make them feel comfortable, then they kind of, will, especially if you're working with them over and over again, like, you hear everything.
Sure.
They tell you everything. And, and there are some people that get really involved in it, and to their detriment. But I sort of just, I'm a good listener, so I listen. And I don't really like sugarcoat things. Like, I'll say, if they're asking my opinion, I will say what my opinion is, and, in a nice way. But, that it's really about building that relationship with them and that trust with them, but also knowing, like, these people, aren't your friends, most of them. When you're not working with them anymore, you're probably not going to hear from them. You're probably not going to hang out with them like you might have when you were. And that's okay. I mean, it happens as performers too. When you're in a show with people, especially on a tour with people, you become like this close-knit, I don't want to say family, because it's not, everybody says family, it's not a family. abusive family maybe, but
It's a team of people. Yeah.
yeah. And but then someone leaves and then they're gone, and you don't, it's rare when you actually like keep in contact with them. And and I told the woman that I have out on the Wicked tour now is my makeup supervisor, Tish. She had never gone out on a tour before, and that was one of the things I warned her about. I was like, you are going to get very attached to some people out there, I said, and then they're going to leave. And you have to understand, like, it's going to be tough, but you have to prepare yourself for it, because it's just what happens. It's not, doesn't have to do anything with like they don't like you anymore, or it's just you're in a certain time in a certain place.
I think that happens with many jobs, though. Like
Yeah.
Trey and I are probably an anomaly that we met at work and are still friends. And he comes over and uses the bathroom sometimes. And I'm just kidding.
I fly 16 hours just to like come use
Just
the
to use the
bathroom.
bathroom.
I'm sorry.
I hope it's a really nice bathroom, because if it's worth a 16-hour flight, it better be.
Look,
You better
it's
have one of those
immaculate.
Japanese bidet things. Yeah.
Oh.
Look, I won't talk about the things that grace Emily's bathroom. All I can say is that I love the porcelain fountain that exists in her bathroom. It's very calming.
It's very calming. Yeah. The music, the live music.
How did you book BTS to come perform in your bathroom?
I figured that was as unexpected as you can get, and so I just went for it. BTS, goodness.
When you mentioned doing a tour, and so I'm curious because you've done theater in like a singular house before, in that same performing house. What is it like then with that group of people traveling to those different places?
I mean, Wicked was my first tour. I hired myself to go out on it because at that time I wasn't ready to be a makeup designer, and I wanted a full-time job. So that's why I hired myself to do Broadway, and I did that for a little over a year. And then when the tour was going out, I was like, I'm going out on tour because you can make more money because you get your per diem, and then if you find your own places that are cheaper, you can save a lot. So it was weird because I had never been in a situation like that before. And it was that thing where at that time too, Wicked was such a huge phenomenon. And so people were so excited about being a part of it. And it really, like, I don't want to say we got close, and we did some of us got close. Like, I'm still best friends with one of the women who was in the ensemble there. Like, we video message every day. She comes up to visit. She was actually just up here. My mom passed away a few weeks ago, and so she was planning on coming up one weekend. She came up the week before so she could be with me the week of the funeral. Left, then came back the following weekend just to like hang out. But you do sort of kind of latch onto each other because you're all that you have. And so it creates this weird sense of camaraderie and relationship that you don't experience when you're not traveling around the country, because you're working in one city for a few weeks, and then you're all packing up and you're going to the next city for another couple of weeks, and then the next city and the next city. So being on tour is like a weird surreal experience as well, because it's not real life, and you're not living a real life. You're living this sort of fantasy life where, my first 2 years, I had never had this kind of money before in my life. I didn't grow up super poor, but we also didn't really have, a lot of money. We're basically like your lower middle class. And so that Wicked was at its height. And there were so many, at one point there were 9 companies of Wicked open worldwide, and I was making money off of all of them. And then I was on tour working full time and getting my per diem. So I had all of this money that I had never experienced in my life. And I just spent it on the stupidest stuff, like buying designer clothing that like would then fall apart, a few times wearing it, or just spending. Although it did give me my love for food, because I was going to really amazing restaurants, which I still do. But
It's fun.
But Yeah, but for the first 2 years of being on tour, I like hardly saved any money at all because I was so like, it was such a strange, like we were just going everywhere and spending money and, buying all these things. And then I realized, I sat down, I was like, ooh, I'm not doing this really well. Like I need to really like buckle down. And this last 2 years I was on tour, I really started saving up and doing that. But it's like you get caught up, and everybody that's on it around you is caught up in that same thing usually, unless they're working on something specific, or I mean, the Alphabet and Glinda rarely ever went out, because they had to do 8 shows a week and sing that show, and they
Mhm.
couldn't go out,
Yeah.
and drink all night like the rest of us.
No. I think back to some of the stories. We had a couple guest artists that we brought in to do some shows with us, and I can definitely tell you that I was one of the people that was like, "Yeah, let's go out," and the guest artist would say, "No, I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna go rest. I'll see you all tomorrow." Cut to the next day when we all show up, and we are not in our 100% form, and still had to
Mhm.
do this show. And then the guest artist shows up on stage and they are immaculate. So to anybody listening, take heed. As you get older, you cannot do the same things you did when you were 22. I'm just
No, you
saying.
cannot. No, you cannot. One of my favorites, though, is working with Carmen Cusack and Katie Rose Clark, because uh, they were like the epitome of professional, because they would go out and they would drink, not excessively, but they would come out and drink, and then they would get up the next day, and then they would go in and give 100% in their show. And it was really great to have that, because it showed everybody else that, look, you have to put 100% in this. You can't slack off. Like, we go out and we have a tougher show than you do, vocal wise and energy wise, and here we are like giving everything, you know to the show, so you can give everything to the show as well.
Dang. Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like, I don't know how you do it, because if I was doing your role, I don't think I'd be able to do it, that's for sure. And I was much younger at the time.
I'm curious a little bit because you mentioned that there were companies across the world performing Wicked. And it makes me think about like the evolving process of a show. Does does the makeup at all change over the course of a show, or has it pretty much stayed the same over the different iterations?
When I started, I was under the impression that it always had to stay the same, and we just had to make it work. Um, and what I've realized is, with makeup, it doesn't work that way. You're putting it on different skin tones, you're putting it on different face shapes, on different ages. It One style of makeup or one design of makeup does not work for everyone. And so now with my work, I have started changing it up. With Wicked, after the pandemic, I went, when it reopened on Broadway, went to make sure everything was okay. And I looked at it and I was like, this looks so dated, because the ensemble makeup was designed in 2003 based on editorial makeup that was happening in 2003. So, of course, it looks dated. So, 2 years ago, I redesigned all of the female ensemble. And then just recently, I redesigned Glinda, because we were having issues with a lot of the Glindas, like putting too much on and looking at the face charts and being like, oh, this is what it needs to be. And it becomes, really hard and harsh. And that's not what Joe Mantello wants. And so I was getting so many notes. I was like, okay, let me redesign this and make it more modern and more fresh and more pretty. In 2003, everybody had matte skin. So everybody was like powdered down, you know, and crazy and flat and matte. And now that's not what it is. So now it's like changed. Where I'm telling them, they can wear, foundations that look more dewy or more fresh. So it's like, you still can't do crazy highlight, because that looks ridiculous. And sometimes it makes you look like you're sweaty on stage. But, you can do it. But, I redesigned it when we went to Japan with Wicked. Uh, I did all the makeup on them. And I had done makeup on Asian faces before, so I understood, but I was like still under that impression, like it has to be this because this is what the design is. And then they went up on stage and they all looked awful because I made them look Western. And
I was gonna ask that. Yeah.
so I went through and I redesigned all of the face charts so that they would work for an Asian face. In South Korea, they wanted to look more Western, and it looked crazy.
Yeah.
And so I had to really work with them. And I was only there for 3 days because they didn't want to send me originally. And then the director was like, no, he needs to come. And so I flew in one day, worked 3 days, and then flew back. And so it's really quick, but I really had to impress upon them that like you can't do it like this. Like I know that's what the culture is here, but like it doesn't look good on stage on you, and it's not flattering. Um, but yeah, and last year, speaking of evolving, last year I got asked by a Brazilian company who had gotten the rights to the book and the music of Wicked, but not to the design, to come down and redesign the show for them. And so 20 years after designing the show the first time, I got to go and redesign it and make it into whatever I wanted to. They gave
Oh,
me free reign
cool.
to do
Yeah.
whatever.
Awesome.
Uh, the Madame Morrible was being played by a trans woman of color. And the director was like, let's make Madame Morrible a trans woman of color. So let's just lean into it. And so we did this sort of like slightly draggy look. She loved it. There's a lot of like contour and highlight, but like good, not crazy. And she loved it and she looked incredible. And it was it was really cool to like 20 years later be like, oh, I get to like do this and probably do a lot of things that I wanted to do in the beginning, but couldn't.
I'm so happy because I was going to ask if you were involved with that. There are
Mhm.
videos that will pop up on my either Facebook feed or my TikTok feed.
Mhm.
Yes, I acknowledge recording in theaters is not, it should not be done, but I'm also very happy to get to see some of these videos of
Well, in Brazil, you can record whenever the hell you want to. Like people just take
really.
out their phones at any point during a show and film musical numbers, everything. Whereas like, here, and in most places, like it's not until they do the curtain call, or if they're doing, like a lot of the musicals now do, like especially like with like MJ or those like jukebox musical type of stuff where they do like a big mega mix at the end, and then you can take out your phones. Oh no, there people take them out all the time and just record everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Things
Okay.
that would get you kicked out of a theater here.
Yeah.
Yep. No, because we were like, these people are filming. Like, do we tell the ushers that they're filming? And they were like, no, they don't care. Because for them, because what happens is they get the publicity and they don't have to pay for it. So it goes out there and then it trends
Mm.
and then people start looking for stuff. And so for them, it's more publicity and I mean, it really works. I mean, because everybody saw that flying in Brazil and they were like, what?
That's kind of an interesting take that you it's kind of like when you hear about something leaking that shouldn't, and then all of a sudden it's the most amazing viral thing and everybody wants a piece of it.
Yep.
Makes sense,
Hmm.
um
Yeah, because they know people will come to see the show because they've seen this clip and then been like, oh my God, I have to see the show now because
yeah.
this looks incredible. Like that happened with her flying. Like when they showed that video of her flying over the audience on the broom, like that made everybody want to see it, including everybody here. Like in the US, I kept getting messages being like, oh my God, I need to see that. And I was like, yeah. The first time she flew when we were in tech, because I was sitting in the middle in the back, so she basically flew right over my head, and she was right in front of me, and then she kind of comes down, so she's almost within touching distance, and then she goes back up and flies back onto the stage, and like I teared up because that was the flying that I had always imagined.
Very cool.
And I was like to have this vision in your head of what it was going to look like, and then to finally like see something like this, it was really powerful too, because no one expected it in the beginning, so the audiences would go crazy when she flew out over them. It's kind of like when I saw Cher and she was on a platform and she flew out over the entire stadium on her platform and she like hovered above us for a moment. It was that same sort of like experience.
That is cool.
Oh, yes. I'm so curious because you've designed for Wicked, you've designed for or you've done makeup for Into the Woods. Some of the other shows that I want to call out specifically, found my list. Um, Torch Song, SpongeBob SquarePants, Anastasia, Sunday in the Park with George, Sweet Charity, Beautiful the Carole King musical. Um, I am so curious what if you were to be given freedom to redesign those shows, where does that inspiration come from, and what would you call out as your biggest sources of inspiration?
Hmm. Well, first, I get inspiration from everything. So I'm a big researcher. I love getting like a lot of times I get inspiration from like old Hollywood photos just because of the way that they structured the faces and what they would do to them and how they could change them. And but like art, um, that like other makeup artists work, I think I just pull from everything from nature. I once designed a fashion show based on I was watching a documentary about killer ants, and these ants were this amazing black, red, shiny color, and it fit the show so well that I created like I took like lip gloss and some powdered pigment, and I created that color to use in the show.
Cool.
So I kind of just open it up to whatever, and then just go from there. I mean, if it's a period piece, it's pretty simplistic now because it's all in my head now. Um, but if I to redesign a show, I think again, I pull like when it was Wicked, I was like, well, I'm gonna do a lot of makeup because the Brazilians love makeup. So that was like my first step where I was like, I can go further and I can push it further. And like the concept was that, Glinda was the first influencer in Oz. And so I made her like Instagram ready, her makeup, which I could never do here in the US because that's not the look that they're going for. But there, I knew I could do that. So it was like, like then pulling images and being like, okay, I want to use this from this and this from this. But even when I redesigned the Glinda here, I looked up a bunch of like, editorial photos using pink and found all these different photos and then kind of merged it into what I thought was going to work.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it shows that like even with being an artist and giving a certain amount of creativity, you're still out there doing research to see what works with all of these different faces and having to be consultative so that it can still suit the overall message of the show or the overall intent of the character if it's for a theatrical performance.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of my favorite things is to go and look at portraiture in museums. So any kind of portraiture, like whether it's paintings or photography, whatever. And most of my work that I do is portraiture as well. And so I get really inspired by that. And so sometimes just seeing the way that people combine colors or one of my friends, Tony DiTerlizzi, is an artist and a writer. He wrote the Wandla series that was just they just did it on Apple TV. They just did an animation on Apple TV. He also wrote the Spiderwick Chronicles with our other friend Holly Black, and he's an artist. And so seeing the work that he does, it's not the work that I do at all. I'm always amazed at how he can paint so well, but he would give me tips and be like, oh, I never use black. Like I combine blue and this and that, and then you get a black, but it's not black because sometimes when you go straight towards a black color, it becomes too harsh and too much. And so to just those little things that kind of have sort of helped and inspired me as well.
So cool.
You're the kind of makeup artist I loved having on, because I used to do a lot of runway shows. I was a fashion designer, and I always loved going over the top and kind of, but somebody who would kind of look at the concept of my whole line and make something that made sense and maybe put that work into researching and developing it. There were a few makeup artists that were kind of, we're just gonna do plain Jane on everybody, and I was like, no, this is art. This is a show. I want everybody to stand out. I have this dress that's inspired by the monarch butterfly. Please do something, more for the makeup. And I was very lucky and had many artists that were really cool, but like you'd be fabulous.
I actually did do a fashion show.
Yeah.
Key to fashion show that was inspired by butterflies.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was a latex designer. She was super, super cool and made some really incredible outfits at the time when like latex wasn't like the cool in thing.
Yeah.
And it was butterflies, and I was like, well, how can I interpret this and not have it look like face painting butterfly on a face? And I did washes of color that all sort of faded into each other, and depending on the outfits, depended on what color they got. And sometimes I got two colors, but there was no like, it wasn't like a hard shape. Everything was really soft. And then we did long individual lashes, and we would do them like randomly on the top and on the bottom to represent the wings of the butterfly. And then it was just a wash of blush, very light on there, and then like a wash of color on their lips. So it was like more stain than like a specific lip. And it was really cool to see that juxtaposed with like the fact that they're wearing rubber and latex, but then looking so soft and pretty. It was really cool.
Cool. I would love to see that. That's amazing. It sounds amazing. I'm imagining it anyway. Very cool. Yeah, I'm a big butterfly fan.
Nice.
Trey knows.
Yeah. Also for bees.
Bees. Yeah, bees.
Bees.
Yep.
I had a question. Left me. Why now?
That's how it works.
Mm-hmm. Always happens.
So in addition to this, in addition to being a makeup artist and a makeup designer, you're also, as you mentioned, a fine artist. So I'm curious, what types of mediums do you like to work with the most?
I think it just depends. A lot of times it depends on how I feel. I do oil pastels a lot. I do acrylic. A lot of times I'll do an acrylic base, like the background and maybe like the skin tone is acrylic. And then I do all the detail in like oil pastels or regular pastels. I just did a piece, the Provincetown Arts Association and Museum has a benefit every year called the 12 by 12. And if you remember, you can submit a piece that's 12 by 12, and then they put it up there, and you can either take half and donate half. It's a silent auction. So you can take half and donate half to the museum, or you can donate 100%. So this is my third time doing it, and submitted a piece, and it was watercolor, gouache, and ink, which I don't normally work with, but decided this was going to be what I wanted because it was going to give me the feel and the color and stuff that I wanted. So, but yeah, I think it just depends. Like the series I'm working on now, I have stuff in pastels. I have the catfish one, which is just pictures and printed out pictures in acrylic paint. I have another one that's acrylic and pastels. I have one that's just in charcoal, and then the last piece that I'm going to start working on now is it's going to be just in oil pastels. So, and it's a huge piece, so it's gonna take a while, but yeah. And then the next series I'm going to be working on is going to be exploring family and my growing up, and especially like in the 70s, and so I'm incorporating macrame into it because I used to do that as a kid. And then I had done when I lived in Western Mass, I had done an arts festival, and I had done a piece. An installation piece, which I love doing installations of my childhood from 1971 to 1980. So I have a lot of the toys still that I had when I was a kid, some books, like little things like that. And then I found all of this other stuff online, like on eBay. and set it up in this black curtained room, and then painted parts of the objects black, so they kind of faded into the darkness. Like I had an 8-track player with like 70s headphones and all the 8 tracks I used to listen to. I had slides, like old slides from my family, so I had a slide projector showing the slides up on the wall, and had done fake wood paneling up on the wall with a big like cutout so that the slides could show. But it was like, when you are remembering things from your past, you don't always remember every detail, or you don't remember them clearly, which is why I painted a lot of the stuff black so that it would kind of fade. And then I had an old rocking chair with a tray table next to it with a basket of chips. And on the TV, I hooked my computer up to this TV, to a monitor that was in an old like 70s TV face thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it started off with Saturday morning cartoons, like all clips from that, and then went in, like did commercials of like toys, and then it went into like the stuff I used to watch in the afternoon, um, and then like the nighttime shows and things like that. So it kind of went through, so you could just sit and kind of watch all of this on a loop.
Oh, wow.
All right, I have 2 comments. Number one, you're not giving them just a show, you're giving them an experience designing this.
Yeah.
And like, I love that. The other thing was more about the series that you wanted to do afterwards. I love that you already have that planned,
Yeah.
and already have that ready to go. I think it
Yeah.
speaks to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it happened because of what just happened with my mom, where 'cause she declined really quickly. Like it was like, she had
Sorry.
Parkinson's and some dementia with the Parkinson's, but thank you. But how, like, that was the reason I moved back, was so that I could be closer to her and be around more often, and see her more often. And so as we were going through this, like it really came into my head. I was like, this is the next thing that I'm exploring my sexuality in the one that I'm doing right now, and my age, and now I need to explore the past. And I've been going to therapy as well this past year, and it's bringing up a lot of things that I thought I had dealt with, and apparently did not. And not always bad things, but just things.
Yep.
And a lot of it is family, centered. And so it's like I wanted to be able now to take these emotions that I've been feeling, especially a lot of the stuff with my mom, and be able to like express that part in art, and also to create, like, she's the one that taught me macrame. And so, to be able to incorporate that into it, and I want to do these giant pieces. We'll see if it'll actually happen, but these giant pieces, random abstract pieces that kind of look like figures, but made out of macrame.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah. We'll see if my hands can deal with it, because I now have tremors in my hand,
Oh,
which
no.
makes it, yeah, it's been making makeup difficult for me. So, trying to figure out what the next step is going to be, because unfortunately I can't retire now because I'm not old enough to. But
Sure.
but yeah, so we'll see if I can actually do all the knots with my hands.
Right.
Might have to take a lot of breaks.
Well, I can't wait to see what comes of that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Sorry, we're both like.
We're both ready to
gonna
ask a question.
Yeah. I was wondering if you encounter people who are interested in getting into the makeup field, what do you tell them?
Well, when I tell them it's going to be a lot of work, it's not easy. And I think what I've experienced with this generation that's coming up now, because have had immediate access to everything, that is the impression that that's what's going to happen. Like they're going to say, I want to do this, and someone's going to be like, well, yes, of course you can come and do this. Like, we'll hire you right away. And I think what people don't understand is that it's a process, and it's a lot of work and a lot of struggle. I'm like, but if this is what you really want to do, then you need to follow through. You need to go through it, because it's also really rewarding once you get to that place, but you're not going to immediately get there. And so, putting in the work, putting in the time, doing things for free, I always tell people, like, get your family or your friends and like just do play and have fun and do makeup on them and put them under different lights or take pictures, even on your phone, because you get to see what happens and how, how the makeup transforms or how it works or if it works. And then you can see a lot of times, like with my art, I do that. I take pictures of it and then I look at the photo, because sometimes seeing something so close, you don't see it. But when you're looking at it in something inanimate as a photo, you start to see, oh, the balance is off here. Oh, this is off here. And the same thing with makeup. Like you can do the same thing and you get to see, oh, one contour is higher than the other. That's what's looking weird. But I couldn't see that looking at the face live. And then I say take art classes, because it'll teach you color theory. It teaches you light and dark. It teaches you, about the human body and the skeletal structure and the muscular structure, to understand placement for certain things, or if you want to change things up, how do you change it? But understanding what is underneath that actually makes it happen helps you do it on the face itself or on the body if you're a body painter.
Solid advice.
That really
Yeah.
is.
And be kind. That's the other thing I say, is be kind. Like, always be kind, because that's what's going to get you more jobs than if you don't have to be the best makeup artist. But if people really like working with you, that's what's going to get you the work.
That's the most important thing, is being kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a cat on my desk.
I see.
Emily stole my question that I was going to ask, so I love that we were on the same page about that.
Oh, I love that.
My other question is, when it comes to people that you want to meet, you've had an opportunity now to work with some incredible individuals, but I'm wondering if there is a person out there that, if you had the opportunity to have lunch with them, whether they're alive or dead, who would you want to have lunch with?
Betty White.
Oh, yes.
Good answer.
Yeah. Her, Carol Channing as well.
Oh.
I was always really sad that I never got to work with especially Carol Channing. I thought there would be some moment where we would overlap somewhere, or we would meet somewhere, because she was always going to like theater things, and I knew people that knew her, and like I just think she was like so cuckoo and crazy, and wonderful. And then of course Betty White, because she's Betty White. So
yeah, legend.
Who wouldn't want to sit down and have a chat with her? And I'm sure there's other people as well, but those are the two that come to mind right away.
Fun story, Carol Channing. I first learned about her when I saw Thoroughly Modern Millie with Julie Andrews.
And Mary Tyler Moore.
Yes. First got introduced to her from that, and she was so cuckoo and so incredible. Led me down a path of finding her in Hello Dolly and just a few other things. And I'm like, I love her so much.
I saw her in Hello Dolly in Atlanta.
Wow. Did you really?
When she was like, I don't know, she must have been in her 70s at that point, I would assume. And still doing it. Still, like, I was like, that is amazing that this one woman could do this role from like the time that she was young until whenever she decided she didn't want to do it anymore. Like, it's kind of cool.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm slightly jealous, but that is incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she seemed very vibrant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My last question for you, Joe, this last hour has been incredible. My last question is for our listening audience: if they were wanting to follow you in your journey, follow you with your makeup career, or follow you as you're creating these different art pieces, where can they go to stay in touch with you and follow your progress?
Instagram is the best. It's at Dulude II, DULUDE, and then the number 2. That's pretty much where I post things. And just so they know, I am not a social media person, so I do not post every day. Sometimes I go for weeks or a month or so without posting anything, um, because if I don't have anything to post, I'm not posting just so that I can keep in the uh, what do you call it, the
Algorithm?
I forgot what you call it when you're in the when you reply and then you become part of the algorithm. Thank you. When you're like, it's not important to me, because what's interesting is that I'm not in the algorithm at all. But when I post things, I get so many responses and so many views and so many things. And I'm like, it's really interesting that my algorithm works that way, where I don't have to post things all the time, because also I don't want people to know every single part of my life. I don't need them to know that. I don't need you to know what I'm doing every day. When I think something is special or important or fun or interesting, that's when I'll post. I generally, if I'm doing a piece of art, I don't post process, unless I'm posting like a section of it, because I don't necessarily I don't know where it's going, and I don't want or need that, any kind of validation or, negative comments about it, until I feel like, okay, this is the piece that I want to present to everybody and I feel happy with it. So I have done like some process stuff where I'll show like different stages or something, but it's usually once it's done, then I'll go into it. But yeah.
Sounds pretty healthy.
Again,
and I'm totally happy with it. I'm totally happy with it. Like I don't need, I never went on TikTok. I just didn't feel the need for me. It's just not who I am or what I need in life. But I know other people, like it's part of, their work, and how they get jobs, how they keep jobs, how they how they promote themselves, and that's part of their job and what they want to work. And I never wanted it to be a job. So for me, it's more like for pleasure and to show people, what I'm doing when I want to show them what I'm doing.
Right.
Joe, I want to sincerely thank you so much for spending time with us today. It's very clear to me that you have such a wealth of inspiration behind you, and that what you design can change, just based on the project that you're working on. And I think that really is a sign of a good artist, not just an artist, but of a good artist. So really thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Oh, thank you. It was really great to be here. I really enjoyed it.
Go ahead. Please go follow Joe on Instagram as he creates. Please also go follow him on his website and look at all the incredible things that he has done.
Which needs to be updated. I'm falling behind, but
we've all been there.
Yeah.
So please go follow him. Please go support him in any way that you possibly can. And also upcoming, please go see Death Becomes Her and see the incredible work that he has been working on with that show.
Yeah, it's an incredible show. It's exactly what you want it to be. It's silly, it's campy, it's funny, and those ladies really kick ass. Like, they're incredible. It's a really, really great show.
Go see it.
Yeah. Megan Hilty, Jennifer Smart, if you are listening to this, hi, I love you.
I'll tell them.
I'm not sweating now, not at all. As we close this episode out, this episode, along with probably every other episode, will be dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, passionate encourager, and greatly missed friend. You can find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. For updates, announcements, and more, please follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thanks, everybody.